everybody. Welcome to our Monday night Torah study. This week we will be studying the Torah Parsha Vayeishev, which is in the book of Genesis. It is chapter 37, verse 1 through chapter 40, verse 23, and it's a pretty big amount of text to cover, and there's several stories in it and deals with a whole lot of aspects and a lot of things. So, in light of the technical difficulties delay we had, we'll just jump right into it. First off, I always, personal practice of mine, whenever I start any Torah study at all, I always say a blessing for studying Torah. So, if you'd like to join me, please feel free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kadishanu b'mitzvotav ma'asot b'divrei Torah. Okay. Now let's get this show on the road here. Now, I've broken our study this week up into 3 sections because I think each of the section works with a certain motive and idea that it has. And the first section I feel deals with deception and then hope in the face of what is seemingly attractive. Now, our Torah portion for this week, it begins with the story of Joseph. Okay, again, now, Joseph is a figure who dominates the remaining narrative of the book of Genesis. And this story differs from previous stories up until this point in the Torah, because previous patriarchal stories are replete with, appearances of God or God's messengers or oracles from them. Now, Joseph never actually sees or hears God, per se, as the other patriarchs have up until this point. Rather, in this story here, we see God working in a much more hidden way, kind of secretly sort of guiding the course of human events. God works in a very, very hidden way here. And like I said, guiding human events, influencing things, shaping the way things happen. And in a way, he also works to bring good out of things that could be perceived and very much seen as, acts of human evil. Yeah, Tracy, that's what I've heard too. Tracy asked, is that why Joseph isn't considered a patriarch? That's what I've heard too, is that all the other patriarchs have either seen God directly, whether God comes to them in a vision or a dream, or like in the case of, Abraham, God would literally come right to him. Joseph never actually, per se, speaks with God directly, rather God speaks to him, influences him, commands him through making other actions and things happen around him. God works in a more remote way with Joseph. Now, what's also interesting about this story is where most of the previous stories up until this point in the Torah have taken place in the land of Canaan and Mesopotamia. This story quickly transitions and largely takes place in Egypt. And this story is actually the beginning of the story of what will eventually become the nation of Israel. However, a lot of these events do happen after Joseph's death, but it all pretty much, begins here. Our story this week, it begins with 17-year-old Joseph, who is the son of Jacob, who is now known as Israel, and Israel's beloved and favorite wife, Rachel. Okay. Now, Joseph, as the Torah tells us, was Israel's favorite son because he was a child of his old age. Okay. Now, Israel favored Joseph so much, he favored him and loved him so much above all his other children, that he actually had made for Joseph this special, ornamented tunic. Now, this extra attention and affection that was lavished upon Joseph by his father, this caused his brothers to, be really, really angry with him, so much to the point that the Torah tells us that they hated him, and that they could not speak a friendly word to him. So you pretty much gotta dislike someone pretty badly if you can't even speak a friendly word to them. It works like with the idea that we've all heard the saying that you can't say nothing nice. You can't say something nice. Don't say anything at all. Well, in this situation, his brothers just chose not to say anything at all, just because their hatred for him was that great. Kind of a big jealousy issue. So as the story progresses, it tells us that Joseph starts having dreams. And the first dream that it tells us, and Joseph kind of in his naivete, he's trying to do whatever he can or whatever. But, his brothers hate him, they don't like him, they don't want nothing to do with him, but Joseph still keeps, trying to be cool with them, and even though they're just always treating him like crap, ignoring him and everything. But, I don't know, maybe it's just childish naivete, but he just keeps, talking to them and trying to be involved with them. Is that sort of, Aaron asked, is that sort of the chicken and egg issue? It is that Joseph doesn't deserve being spoken directly or what? That's a really, really good question, actually. To be honest, I'm not sure. I'd have to take a lot of time to ponder that question. I honestly, I get the idea from the Torah is that it's his brothers, Oh, it's cool, Aaron. It's cool. You guys just ask. Always ask. Asking is a good thing. My thought on it is they just, they dislike Joseph just because because he was a favorite, and they're like, they're probably like, why is he getting treated better than us? Even the older ones. Even his older brother, Joseph, was still the favorite over them. And we have to keep in mind that at this time in history and in the Torah, a lot of regard was given to the older siblings. And a situation like this, where you have a much younger sibling treated better and more love and favor than the older siblings, you can sort of begin to understand why that maybe would tick a lot of the older siblings off. And Aaron asked that I always hear that some of Joseph's issues came out of his father's previous deception. That is true. Also, you have to remember is that Joseph's father, Jacob, he was not the oldest. He had his older brother Esau. Yet Jacob, being the youngest, was still treated favorably over his older brother. So in a way, he might just sort of, we can see it, he sort of maybe inadvertently perpetuated that cycle of events. So again, Joseph, he has a dream. And in this dream, you see that there were binding sheaves in the field. Okay, and suddenly his sheep stands upright, while all of his brother's sheep were in the field too. They gather around Joseph's sheep and start bowing down to him. Okay, Joseph then, he has another dream, and maybe this time in his naivete, he not only tells his brothers about it, but he tells his father Jacob about it this time. And in this dream, he sees the sun, the moon, and 11 stars. Okay, and they're all bowing down to him. Now, these dreams were seen as displeasing because his father and his brothers interpreted them to mean that it was thought that they were having to bow down before Joseph, and that Joseph would come to rule over them. They thought that maybe that Joseph was having dreams and delusions of imperialism and grandeur or whatever. Jonathan, who's the moon? Okay, first off, in the second dream, the Torah tells us that the sun, in the dream, the sun represents Jacob, the moon represents Rachel, and the 11 stars represent Joseph's 11 siblings. So I hope that clarifies that. Okay. Now, the dreams, in fact, were in a way predicting that Joseph would be higher above all of them eventually, but it wasn't like, in a way that's like, he'll be a lord over you or a king over you. The dreams were predicting sort of a different circumstance. The binding sheets, as the rabbis tells us, are a representation of the grain, because binding sheets are used when harvesting grain. They're used to represent the grain that Joseph's brothers and eventually Jacob himself would have to bow down to before Joseph to in order to attain the grain from Joseph, because later on we'll find that they all come to Joseph in Egypt unknowing that it's Joseph, and they have to bow down for him because they're asking to borrow grain, because Egypt had plenty of grain and there was a famine in the land of Canaan and nobody had anything to eat. Now, this speaks of us in our tradition, in the Jewish tradition, in our religion, and it's something that we touched a little bit on in last week's Parsha as well, and that is, to question everything we're told and everything we're taught. Always search for the deeper meaning of things. Okay, never accept anything as face value, just as what you're told. If Joseph's brothers and his father, had maybe taken the time to do this and not just look at it at face value, where they thought that, he's having dreams that, he's going to have grandeur over us and he's going to rule over us and we're going to be his subjects and everything. If they would have realized that his dreams were not dreams of dominance and relegating them to subjugation, but rather that these dreams were just prophetic visions of future events to come. You always have to search for the deeper meaning of things. Ultimately, Joseph's brothers came to hate him even more because of, I don't want to say their short-sightedness, but they're just, not examining what could be the real deeper meaning of the dreams Joseph had. They took it at face value and they used it as a means to just, hate on him even more. And Torah tells us that his father, Jacob, was also compelled to keep the matter in mind. So this leads us to the next part of our story, where things get a lot more sinister. Okay, we have Joseph's brothers who are out in the field tending their flocks, and they see Joseph coming from afar. So they conspired amongst themselves. They plotted to kill him because, obviously they hated him that much. They decided that, what, we're gonna off this guy. We're gonna get rid of him. We're sick of him. We don't like him for whatever reasons they chose to not like him. They're like, we want to be rid of this guy. So it kind of recalls the whole Cain and Abel thing, where it's some fratricide happening, brother killing brother. So, like I said, they see Joseph coming from afar off, and they're like, you know what? We're gonna kill this guy. We're gonna be rid of him once and for all. Now, of all the brothers that were plotting against him, only Joseph's brother Reuben decides that, hey, we shouldn't kill our brother. We shouldn't get our brother's blood on our hands. We should not spill our brother's blood. So Reuben suggests that they just throw Joseph into a pit and leave him there to die. Now, Reuben kind of had an ulterior motive. His ulterior motive was that after the fact, he would wait a little while, and then he would come back to the pit and rescue Joseph and then reunite Joseph with his father. Okay, now one has to wonder, is Reuben doing this for all, good reasons? Is he doing it for the right reason? Rescuing his brothers, so his brothers, wanting to rescue his brothers so his brothers don't kill him and then reuniting him to his father. Is he doing it for the right reasons? Because just, it's, number one, it's wrong to kill, and it's wrong to kill your brother. Or is he doing it, does he have a more ulterior motive behind it? Is Reuben thinking that, I'll go and rescue Joseph, and then I'll bring him back to our father, and when father sees that, his beloved son is alive, he'll be so happy and so overwhelmed, and he'll be grateful and happy to me because he'll be like, Reuben, you rescued my beloved Joseph, and then maybe he'll shower praise and affection on him too, and he'll get a little slice of the pie and be in favor too. You have to wonder, did Reuben have an ulterior motive, or was he just doing what is right for the sake of doing what is right? So, getting back to the story, they toss Joseph in the pit. Yeah, Tracy, good point. There's maybe a bit of both, perhaps. Also, you might forgive Reuben for overturning his count. That is very true, Jonathan. That shame on me for not thinking of that. That's an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, so at this point in our story, we have the brothers, they toss Joseph into the pit, and the Torah tells us that there was no water in the pit. So basically, their idea is they're going to toss Joseph into the pit and just leave him there to die, whether he dies of exposure to the elements, whether he starves to death, or whether he dies of dehydration. Basically, if they leave him there, he's going to die. So then the brothers, they decide, they're right next to the pit, they stop and have a meal there. To me, that just shows really how callous and hateful you have to be to, you let someone's murdered, you leave them there to die, and then right next to it, you're like, let's eat. Let's stop and have a meal here before we head back. So, yes, then they get Ishmael involved again. As they're having their meal and they're preparing to leave, then a caravan of Ishmaelites that are they're on their way down to Egypt, with all their goods that they're going to sell and everything. They come by and Joseph's brothers figure, hey, you know what? We're going to be rid of our brother. We should, why not, they're trying to, I guess, up the ante in the realm of bad things that they're doing on this day. They're like, why don't we see if we can make a profit from this too? So they pull Joseph up out of the pit and they sell him as a slave to the Ishmaelites who were on their way from Midian to Egypt. Now, the Torah tells us that Reuben was unaware of this. He wasn't there when this happened. And when he returns to the pit and he finds Joseph, but finds him gone, he was all like, oh no, the boy is gone. And again, comes to the point where we have to question his motives as to, is he truly upset because he believes his brother is dead, or is he upset because of the loss of maybe an opportunity that he thought he could have to basically score brownie points with his father? So what the brothers then do at this point is they take Joseph's tunic, which they had taken off of him, and they tear it, they beat it up, they make it look like it's literally been beat to hell. Okay? And then they slaughter a kid and splatter the kid's blood and dip it in the kid's blood. So it basically gives the appearance that Joseph got attacked and carried off and eaten by a wild beast. so basically they're, yes, that's right, Aaron, the amazing Technicolor dream show. But so they did this, and basically they're creating an elaborate ruse so they can fool their father, so that he'll believe when they go back and say, look what happened, Joseph got attacked by some wild beast, and it attacked him and killed him, carried him off, and ate him. And then they produced Joseph's tunic, which was like one of his defining things, like you saw this tunic, it's Joseph. And it's all tore up and beat to hell and covered in blood and everything. It would make the lie all the more believable. So the brothers go back to their father, they take the tunic, they show it to Jacob. And they're like, Joseph's dead. Like he got tore up and everything, and look, here's his tunic proving that it happened. Upon being told and shown the doctor's evidence that his son was dead, Jacob, Israel, goes into intense mourning and refuses to be comforted. He even declares, as the Torah tells us, that he would go down to Sheol mourning. That they would go down mourning to Sheol. Again, that he would go down mourning to his son in Sheol for time to turn possible. Now, Jacob's refusal to be comforted and intent to continually mourn actually goes against Jewish tradition. In our tradition, we have, the sitting of Shiva, the Shaloshim. These are limited periods of time that one is allowed to grieve for the loss of a person, someone's death. So it makes us wonder, why would Jacob refuse to, abide by this? Why would Jacob, declare that, I'm going to mourn continually for the rest of my life? There's a passage in the Midrash that tells us that when a person mourns over a person, when they mourn excessively and their mourning continues past the allotted time permitted for grieving and mourning under Jewish law, then God himself actually will say to that person, why do you continue to mourn? You're not any more compassionate than I. Then Midrash also tells us that one may be comforted for the dead, but not for the living. Now, this can give us pause and a reason to wonder and to speculate. Obviously, you're not permitted to mourn under Jewish law. You're not permitted to mourn continually for the rest of your life for someone who has passed, because at some point you have to go on living. At some point you have to stop mourning and you have to go on about the business of your life. You have to go on living your life. You still have a life to live. You have to live. God commands you to live your life. Okay, but here we have Jacob being, saying, I'm going to constantly keep mourning. Now it makes us wonder, did Jacob, kind of know something? If Tracy says, well, the living need to live and not spend their lives given to Hashem by dwelling on their grief and sadness. That is true. That is true, Tracy. Also, we are to honor life. Our religion and our faith is all about living life, celebrating life, and upholding life. We do recognize that death and dying is a part of life, and that mourning for someone who is dead is part of life. But that shouldn't become the only aspect of your life. Death sucks. Losing a loved one is terrible, and it's heartbreaking, and it sucks. But in our tradition, it teaches us, and we recognize that, you live your life. When a person passes, you take the time to mourn them. You mourn them for an allotted period of time, and then you move on. You still have your life. You have to go on living your life. Now, always wonder, did Jacob know something? Did Jacob maybe suspect something that maybe his son was still alive, or did he, it seems like, it gives the thought that perhaps that he had some crazy hope beyond all, expectation. And this teaches us and speaks to us of as Jews, we have there's amazing Jewish sense of hope that we have. It's the idea that when things are seemingly at their darkest, we still cling to that hope, even no matter how small that hope may be at the time, that this isn't the end of it, and that things, will somehow work out. We as a people have been through so much all through history, and no matter what, even in our darkest times, we've always, clung to that hope that, this is not the end. This will get better. You cling to that hope, and it teaches you that, that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Regardless of how small it is, you always hope for better, and you trust in God that things will get better, and that this isn't the end. And you just hang on to that hope. Because for me, the Jewish idea of hope is just one of the more beautiful things, which I love so much about our religion. And moving on to what I see as the second point of our parsha this week is kind of works on the idea of, can a wrong become a right, and can two wrongs make a right? The story transitions now. It turns to the story of Judah. Now, Judah was married and had 3 sons with his wife Shua, and his sons were named Onan, and Shelah. Now, Judah had gotten a wife for his oldest son, and her name was Tamar. Now, the Torah doesn't tell us very much about this particular son of Judah, okay? But what it does say to us is that was displeasing to God, so God took his life. And that's really all we ever hear about this particular It does make one wonder, though, if God in all of his mercy and compassion and kindness and everything, if he was so displeased by her, so much to the point where God, decided, what, heck with this guy, I'm going to off this guy. If he was that displeasing to God, how really irritating or bad of a person did he actually have to be? Something to really, really wonder. Now, under Jewish law at the time, if a man died and left his wife childless, his brother was to marry her, and the first son that they had together would be considered the deceased brother's son, and this was done to see to the continuation of the deceased brother's family line. Now, later in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, we learn that the rabbis also tell us that if a man would be excessively burdened by having to do this, by having to marry his brother's widow and produce a child with her, okay, and that child would be considered of his deceased brother's son, that it tells us later on that he would have the option to decline this obligation under a procedure that the rabbis call halitza. Okay? But at this point of the Torah where we're at right now, no such procedure exists. So just follows the rules as to where if your brother dies and leaves his wife childless, you are obligated to marry his widow and have a child with her, and that first child will be considered to be of your deceased brother's line. It will be considered his seed. So this means that Onan was obligated to marry Tamar and have children with her, and his first son would be considered to be Er's son to continue his family line. However, the Torah tells us that every time Onan cohabited with Tamar, that he allowed his seed to be spilled. Basically, he was kind of doing practicing like a birth control method in a way, because he knew that if he would have a child with Tamar, it wouldn't be considered his. It would be considered of his brother's seed. So the Torah Tamar, it would prevent him getting her pregnant. Well, this was very displeasing to God. Yeah, Tracy is not to be crass. She said not to be crass, but the pull-out method, basically. Yeah, exactly. You know, if you don't actually implant your seed in your wife, you can't get her pregnant, basically, to just put it simply. So but doing this was very, very, very displeasing to God. So when Onan goes and does this, God was so angry at him that he takes Onan's wife too. He offs Onan too. So this leaves Judah with only one son left, his son Shelah. And Tamar is a widow yet again. And instead of giving Shelah to be married to Tamar, which is what was proper under Jewish law at the time, Judah instructs Tamar to go and reside in her father's house as a widow until his son Shelah is grown. What Judah was actually doing here, he was protecting his youngest and only remaining son because he feared that Shelah would end up, dying the same way as his brothers did. So the story moves forward, and sometime later we have Judah's wife Shua passing away. She died. And then later on after that, eventually, Judah finds himself in Timnah, where Tamar happened to be staying in the house of her father. Now, she's still a widow in mourning, childless, doesn't have a son or a child to be the heir to Judah's family line. So when she learns of Judah's arrival there, she takes off her widow's garb, puts a veil over her face, and basically pretends to be a prostitute. And she finds Judah. Judah propositions her. She agrees, and she lays with Judah, who's essentially her father-in-law, and becomes pregnant with a child by her father-in-law, Judah. Later on, when it's discovered that she's pregnant by act of prostitution, which is a sinful act, Torah tells us, she's brought out and she's to be burned alive for it. At this point now, Judah, he's now realized that it's been, demonstrated to him that the child that Tamar is carrying is his line. He intervenes, and Tamar is spared execution. And Judah basically he makes the admittance. The Torah tells us that she is in no more in the right than he is. And basically, is what he's saying is that his actions of refusing to give his one remaining son to Tamar as a husband, basically they set in motion the chain of events which compelled Tamar's actions. Tamar wanted a son that was rightfully hers, and which was of the line of Judah, that would continue the line of Judah. Tamar goes on to give birth. She actually goes on to give birth to twin sons. The twin sons are named Perez and Zerah, and it's of the line of Perez that eventually produces Israel's great king, King David. And it's interesting to note that also through the line of King David, that is the line that is prophesied to us that the Messiah, becoming Messiah, whenever he comes, will be of the line of King David. Now, this passage of the scripture, it kind of works to speak to us of the idea that one is compelled to commit a sin as a result of the sin of another. As in this case, we have Judah withholding his son Shelah from Tamar, even though he was in violation of the law by doing so, in violation of the law, and considered a sin. This caused Tamar to resort to her actions in order to attain the son that was rightfully due to her. That the person's sin may be forgiven, and the original sin of the first person is seen as can be seen as an even greater one. For not only was their action sinful in the first place, but it caused another person to commit a sin. That's like making like even bigger sins. Like first, you sin, that's bad enough, but then your actions cause or compel another person to sin. It makes your sin like kind of doubly worse. The Torah tells us that Tamar's actions are justified in Judah's eyes because, although sinful and a violation of the law, they ensured that the family line of Judah was preserved. It's interesting to note that the Midrash in the Talmud that sees Judah's name is named in Hebrew, which contains every letter of a four-letter name of God, the Yod He and Vov He. The rabbis teach that it can be seen as a reward to Judah because of his public confession of this sin and his wrongdoing. Basically, he admitted, that he had obtained a child by prostitution, and he admitted it in a very, very, very public form. So, it was humiliating. It was, humiliating to him, and it was a shameful act. And like I said, he had to be humiliated to admit this act on such a public scale. And he was actually caught. He was humbled by it. The humiliation in a way humbled him. This also brings to light the concept that there are times when, actually violating Jewish law, it can actually be seen as, permissible, and even sometimes a greater good can come from it. If Tamar hadn't did what she did, even though it violated the law and was considered a sin, then if she hadn't done what she done, there never would have been a King David. And then through David, then there never would have been a King Solomon. And, Solomon built the first temple, so who knows, if we want to second guess history, there might not have ever been a temple. And then, like I said before, because the Messiah that comes through the line of David, who came from Perez's line, we might not have a prophecy of a Messiah that can come. This also, it's quite reminiscent that, we have the laws of the Shabbat, which says, there are certain things that are considered work or whatnot that we are prohibited from doing on the Shabbat. But we're also told that if a human life is in danger and happens to be on the Shabbat, and the only way to save that life is to violate a law of the Shabbat, we're not only authorized to do so, we have to violate the law of the Shabbat, but we're not only authorized to do so, we're commanded to do so. It basically touches on the idea that, as with all our law, all halakhic law, all Jewish law, we're to live by the law and not die as a result of the law. Now we'll move on to the final, what I see is the final teaching point in our Torah study this week. It's the idea, to me, it's the idea of there's more scandalous false plotting, and touches on the concept of God as the great empowerer of all things. Now, here, at this point in our story, it returns to its focus on Joseph as the main point of attention. Now, Joseph, having been sold into slavery and taken into Egypt, Joseph again finds good fortune in the house of Potiphar, who was courier and chief steward of Pharaoh, and he's the one who purchased Joseph. Now, as in this case again, Potiphar was blessed abundantly through Jacob and because of Jacob, because he was kind to him and everything. And this is reminiscent of how when, God blessed Laban with abundance, because Laban was, tied to Jacob. Jacob, and, treated him well at first. Basically, the Lord would bless everyone who had anything to do with Joseph for Joseph's sake, as he had done with Jacob previously. Now, the Torah tells us that Potiphar had taken a liking to Joseph and treated him kindly because it was apparent to Potiphar that Hashem was with Joseph and that blessed everything Joseph did and everything Joseph touched, and that blessing extended to all those having dealings with Joseph. So Potiphar puts Joseph in charge of his entire household and made him his personal attendant. Basically, it's like he's his first. Nowadays we call it a personal assistant. Okay, God bless Potiphar's house for Joseph's sake. Now, the Torah tells us that Joseph described as a very good-looking man, and eventually Potiphar's wife notices him, takes a liking to him, and basically she tries to seduce him. She comes on to him. Joseph, obviously, out of loyalty to his master and knowing, having the moral ideal that it's wrong to lie with another man's wife, he refuses her advances. Now, this infuriates her, because she thinks she's all high and mighty. Yeah, Tracy says a little strong. She literally grabs him and tells him, "Lay with me." That's pretty blatant. That's like, I guess that's the Toradic way of saying, "Hey, I want you to sleep with me. I want you to come to bed with me tonight." So, like I said, he spurns her. Joseph spurns her. He's like, "No, can't do this. Now, she's infuriated by this, and after several times of her trying to, she's like, trying the whole, she's like, "Hey, lay with me, nobody will know, blah, blah, blah." The final time that it happens, as she's basically accosting him again, as he's fleeing her, he's like escaping from her because he's, trying to be a man of honor and everything. She, again, an ironic thing that happens with Joseph involving Joseph's tunic, she grabs him and catches him, and as he escapes from her, he ends up leaving his tunic behind. Well, again, she uses his tunic. It's used as a piece of false evidence against him. So basically, when the wife tells her husband Potiphar, she tells him the lie. She tells her husband that, your servant, this Israelite slave that you brought to us, she tells him that he's trying to come on her, trying to sleep with her, and she's like, look, I fought and I got away, and in the struggle when I got away with him, look, he fled and he left his tunic here, so here's the proof. So basically, Potiphar obviously believes his wife. He believes, because he's thinking, why would his wife lie to him? And he naturally believes her, and he has Joseph thrown into jail. And it was basically the Pharaoh's prisoners in jail. Now, due to God being with him here, still, Joseph's jailers, they're disposed to treat him with kindness, and eventually he's put in charge of all the prisoners in the jail. It's here that the idea of dream interpretation comes in again, because while Joseph is in jail, he interprets the dreams of two prisoners who were former servants of Pharaoh, who, for whatever reason, they've fallen from Pharaoh's grace. And there's the Pharaoh's cupbearer and the Pharaoh's baker. And Joseph interprets both of their dreams. He interprets the cupbearer's dream that he has to mean that that the cupbearer will be restored to his position. He'll be taken out of jail, be set free, and he'll be restored to his position. Then he interprets the baker's dream to mean that he won't be restored to his position. However, he will be taken out and put to death by impalement. Basically, they're going to impale him on the plank. Okay, so the cupbearer then promises that in return for Joseph's kindness, that the cupbearer promises Joseph that for interpreting his dream, that he'll make mention to Pharaoh of it in the hope was freed and returned to his position at Pharaoh's side, bearing the cup to him, and the baker was taken from the prison, taken out, and impaled upon the spike. And our Torah portion for this week draws to a close with us being told that Joseph at the time remained in prison for the time being because the cupbearer, even though he promised Joseph that he would, make positive mention of him to Pharaoh, he just simply forgot. He forgot about it. So Joseph remained there in prison for the time being. Now, here we have, Joseph with his ability to interpret the deeper meaning of a person's dreams. And obviously, yes, exactly, Tracy, hence begins the slavery in Egypt. This pretty much begins a 400-year period for us in our history. Now, we have Joseph here with his ability to interpret the deeper meaning of a person's dreams. Now, something like this is an awesome gift for a person to have. It's like a psychological thing. You give insight into, what's going on with a person, psychologically wise and everything. This is a huge gift for a person to have. What's interesting is that Joseph doesn't take the credit for having the ability to do all this himself, but instead he gives the credit to God. When the two prisoners speak of having had dreams and they're lamenting because there's no one there to interpret them, Joseph replies to them. He doesn't reply, his reply isn't, hey, I can interpret your dreams, tell me them. His reply is, surely God can interpret. See, it's awesome. That is awesome that, he has this wonderful gift, and yet he gives all the credit to God for it. His realization of this, display, it kind of puts on display to us and tells us that, that number one, God is the ultimate giver of knowledge and answers, okay, for any question, whether it be a dream or otherwise, and who best to interpret one's dreams than, the very giver of those dreams, which is Hashem. Who better to interpret a dream than the very creator of the mind that had that dream in the first place. Jacob's statement demonstrates and it gives the idea that ultimately, without God, we're nothing. We can't do anything without God. We always need God there to help us, with everything. And that with God, with Him in our lives, and through Him, we can do what could be seen as miraculous. I can interpret dreams, survive and thrive and find success even in the harshest environments that faces seemingly insurmountable odds, and also defeat seemingly undefeatable enemies and opponents. And it's interesting is that through God and with God, even though he doesn't actually see God, hear God, or speak directly to God as the patriarchs have before him, Joseph has done and will do all of these things. Survive against incredible odds, defeat seemingly undefeatable enemies, has miraculous gifts like dream interpretation and everything. It teaches the idea that, through God and with God, if he's in our lives, we're empowered in anything possible. And with that will draw this very long lesson to a close. Does anybody have any questions on what we covered tonight? Any questions, comments, or anything? Okay, cool. Well then, nothing comes to mind. Just one very long. Yeah, Tracy, it varies. This week's portion, and I know you were here, Tracy, for last week's portion. They were both like marathons. Like my brain was actually tired after both. John Jonathan, thank you very much. Very kind words. I appreciate it very, very much. Real quick, come to the part near the end of the broadcast where we ask for a donation. If you've been here any class here at one shul, if it's helped you out, if it's enjoyed you, if you've attended, we ask that you donate $5 just for a class. It takes about 100 to 200 bucks a month to run one shul. So any way you can help us is greatly appreciated. We also love it very much and appreciate it very much. If you donate your time, teach a class, lead a service, whatever, just help us out. Help us help you. And with that, I'm going to draw this to a close. I will hang around, as always, in the chat room for a little bit. If anybody wants to chat with me about anything, if they have any further questions or anything, feel free to hit me up, and I will hang out there as long as I'm wanted there. So, with that, Tracy just posted Adam Sandler the Hanukkah song. Awesome. And that jogged my memory and reminded me that when I come to you next Monday night at this time, it will be the third night of Hanukkah. So I'd like to wish everyone here a very wonderful first 3 nights of Hanukkah until we meet again. Hope it's filled with happiness, joy, loved ones, and abundant blessings. More blessings than you can handle. So I wish that for each and every one of you guys. I love you guys all very much, and thank you for attending and hanging out and spending the past hour or so with me. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties and the little crazy heartbeat in the background. I will work on that in the future to see if I can figure out what the problem with that is. Thank you guys very much for hanging out and bearing with me. And as always, I'll leave you with Ahava and Shalom. Love and peace. Good night, everybody. God bless you.